Okay, welcome everybody to the third day of the preliminary budget meeting. The preliminary budget meeting. We acknowledge that this meeting is being held in traditional territory of our friends and our neighbors and our Treaty 8 partners, the Fort Nelson First Nation, as well as the Prophet River First Nation. We recognize the treaty that we share and the rights provided within that treaty, and we recognize the contributions and the enduring presence of the Métis in our community. So today's meeting will be available to a public to attend virtually and is being streamed and recorded as well. So that gets us to the point where we're on the fourth section. Is that pink? Sure, the pink section, which talks about grants to community groups. And you know, this in the past has taken a considerable amount of our time. And it could be that way again today, or it could go quickly. I guess it's really up to council to determine what that might look like. I guess I do have some things I'd like to say about it generally, but I'll turn it over to staff first and see if they have any thoughts with respect to this section.
Sure. No, it certainly takes up over half of the pages in your binder. The groups that provide requests for funding provide a lot of information to us in order to support their request. At the beginning of section 4, White tab 36, there is an overview sheet that identifies the total funding for all of the requests in this group. So what we see is the community organizations are identified. There is a section that identifies the grant and aid, the operating requests and the capital requests, and the net tax dollars required. Just a note, we do have a request from the Phoenix Theater that utilizes a contribution from the reserve that we still hold on their behalf. And we see an increased request overall as a result of new organizations requesting, as well as increased requests. For instance, we had one approved during 2024 for the seniors bus. So the commitment that was there in resolution is also in here as well. But short of that, if council has a way that you'd like to walk through it, we certainly can do that.
Okay, thank you. So I guess mayors are elected to lead, and so I'm going to lead a discussion that I think might be a little bit difficult. I know it was difficult for me coming to this conclusion, but I think there's a reality in our economy and in our situation in our community that we need to recognize. We're seeing the petroleum industry being shut in for most of last year. We're seeing, you know, forestry not close to recreating itself or rebuilding itself to the point where we're seeing dollars coming into the community at the first dollar levels. We're seeing increased asks because of that from more and more community groups with respect to operational funds and their ability to operate and provide the services that they're providing to our community, and all of them are worthwhile. But at some point, you know, I think we have to recognize the reality of what's happening around us and the reality of what's going on in our economy and with the industry. I mean, we've got large taxpayers not paying their taxes, you know, defaulting and you know, to the tune of millions of dollars. And I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's coming at us. We're looking at a policy that looks at grants to community groups and governmental transfers that likely will stimulate more requests for funding from groups that didn't fund. You know, we've had several requests, you know, over the last little while from organizations. Some made applications, some didn't, but they're hanging in the wind out there. They're hanging out there, you know, with requests to come. And this year's total is over $1 million. It's, you know, and there's increasing, I guess, requests for more operational funds from our legacy groups, you know, to increase the work that they're trying to do. And I'm not saying any of them are wrong in asking for those increases, but I think we have to be aware that in funding more increases, that we're going to be seen as being out of touch with what's happening around us as a community, as a council in our community. So I'm having trouble funding the increases. I still want to fund these groups, but I'm having trouble getting through the idea of increasing, you know, some of the requests from our groups. And I think there are a couple of new ones out there, I think, that are critical to new requests that are critical for us to look at. The Literary Society being one of them, and of course the busing that we're trying to do, expand the busing with the Senior Society. Those are two new requests that I think we should be prepared to support, from my perspective. But at some point, we have to consider when is enough enough. And so I'm proposing that we freeze everybody except for the two new primary requests. We freeze everybody at last year's rates because we all agreed that that was something that we were all prepared to fund last year. You know, there's been a significant amount of change in our community since last year's budget. I mean, we had 48 families, you know, lose their jobs, good primary jobs, when the gas plant shut in. And because of that, we've got operators losing their jobs because, you know, the producing companies are just not producing gas because they've got nowhere to produce it. So that's what I'm throwing out there, is that we just freeze everybody at where they were. That we consider capital grants where those grants are already funded, because there's reserves, but that we not consider any other capital. I just find it difficult to fund new capital requests when we've got organizations out there who are struggling to even provide the services that they feel, and I think most of us will feel, are important in our community. So I wanted to throw that out there, and I'm certainly prepared to listen. I think, you know, we're talking generalities here. So I know there are a couple of counselors at the table who, when it comes to some specifics of a couple of these groups, have declared conflicts in the past. But I think as long as we're talking about generalities with respect to potentially, you know, freezing it, I think that everybody can participate in the discussion freely. And I hope that you will. So I throw that idea out to all of you to see what you think. Comments? Sure.
So just a confirmation on search and rescue, didn't get anything last year. And so if it's frozen, does that mean we're not considering
Well,
anything?
I saw search and rescue get 25,000.
Did I miss it?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay, sorry. Toad River. Did I read that one right? Toad River.
Area fighting supplies. I saw them at 25,000 last year for firefighting supplies.
So the groups that received funding last year have all
Yeah.
applied this year. And then we have the increase for the transportation and the new request for the Literacy Society.
Okay, And can you confirm for me your thinking around the Historical Society's request for, because they have, what, I forget the numbers, but a little over $100,000 for operating, and then the balance of the $200,000 that they typically receive, they wanted to put towards capital. What was your thinking on that one?
That's when you look at their application, their capital request is mainly around exhibits in purchasing exhibits for the museum. And I just have trouble, looking at that as a major funding opportunity, I guess, when we've got other organizations that are just struggling to exist or provide the services that I believe most of us believe are important. So, yeah, so if I just wanted to quickly go down the list of what I thought, so I'm looking at the green page right at the start of this. So general community groups would freeze at 20,000, which we've always seen it freeze at. The Peace Liard Regional Arts Council, in my view, I cut that out. I mean, if we're starting to freeze local community groups at the levels that they're at, I have trouble looking at us funding external organizations for the work that they might be doing outside of our community, and whether or not that benefits our community. I had $25,000 for search and rescue, which freezes them where they were last year. Their main funding request that put them up over 40 was for a $22,000 drone, and I think that's a little, they're not asking for $25,000 in operations, but if we freeze them where they were, they can use the money how they see fit, whether they need it for operational funds or whether they need it towards something that they might, but it would freeze them there. The Northern Rockies Senior Society at 55,000, which we've kind of already committed to the shuttle service to leverage that and help it grow. I've got nothing from the Toad River Area Community, I think, because we've operationalized that. Again, nothing for the hall maintenance because we've operationalized that. 25,000 for the firefighting supplies because they have quite a list, and that's what we gave them last year, so it would freeze that there. 30,000 for the Community Literacy Society. Their application has said that this is to tide them over, and I think they're doing good work with literacy and job enhancement, I think they made a good case with respect to the work that they're doing in the community. Grace Manor didn't ask for anything. Lamplighters didn't ask for anything. Chamber of Commerce didn't ask for anything this year, so there's no request. We had the Snowmobile Club that made a request but didn't put in an application. I think there might have been another one that's slipping my mind. Then it comes to the legacy group. So the theater, I saw $229,000, which is a freeze at 184 from last year, or 189 from last year, and then the 40,000 of capital that is their money. So it's hard for us to restrict something that's already theirs. I saw the museum at $140,000, which is more than what they asked for this year in operational funds. And so if we're to be fair and freeze everybody at the same level that we did last year, then there's a little bit of money there that they can use for the purposes that they choose. And the library at $362,000, which is the level that we set them at last year. So that's and that would give us a total of 886,000, I think, as opposed to the million. But I think it's a recognition across the board that we still want to fund the operations, but that with our new policy coming in, there's only so much funds to go around, and we have to start looking at what that will look like once we develop the policy, consult with the folks in the community about that, and then start advertising or communicating it out. I think that's when we'll start to hear what's the real need, what are people going to actually come forward, and that will give us an order of magnitude for a budget in 2026 that we'll have to decide whether that's something which then also helps us to determine a value of grants to community groups or governmental transfers as a percentage of something. Operating funds, that's to be determined. But I think if we understand the order of magnitude, then we can determine, you know, is that something we think we can fund in sustainably? And what is a percentage of that? And so let's just say it's a percentage of operations, and operational funds go up and down, and that's the total available pot for governmental transfers. So that's my vision of how I see this moving forward in the long term. And yeah, I guess it's this is a harsh way of saying it, but I guess it's putting all of the groups on notice that there's change coming because of the state of the economy that we're in. So that's those are the numbers that I propose. That's the reasoning that I propose those numbers. And again, if there's any other clarifications, I'll try to answer those if I can. Staff first.
Oh, actually, no, it's, Counselor Andrews had his hand up. Maybe he's.
Okay, Councilor Andrews, please.
Okay, sorry. Put down now.
Yeah, oh, thanks. You answered most of it. So I figured I would just wait in your further explanation, Mayor. I guess my second part to my question that didn't get answered, part of your rationale was with the lack of taxation and being, I guess, fiscally responsible. So for impact for that, I'm just curious why to put it on the grants to community groups to do the freezing and not the organization as a whole, where that would be the biggest impact to show the recognition of the lack of taxation in the local economy.
Yeah, I understand that question. I think our staff did an amazing job keeping their requests to, you know, just under 1% total increase in the budget. I mean, it looks like 12% because of the allowance for uncollectible taxes. But I think the staff has done an amazing job at keeping us to 1%. And you know, we've gone through that entire budget, both capital and operational. And, you know, I think we were all pretty comfortable that what staff presented to us was adequate. So that's, you know, I get where you're coming from with respect to, you know, why is this all on the grants to community groups? For me, it's the whole process around the new governmental transfer process. It all works together. And I think at some point, you know, we have to have the difficult discussion about how much can we give to how much can we consider increasing? I guess we've already determined how much we're going to give because we do it year over year. But how much can we consider increasing that when so many other people in our economy are losing their jobs and are having a tough time? And so, you know, it's $200 and some thousand, you know, but that's not what I'm doing this for. I'm doing it from the perspective of it's time for us to start asking ourselves the hard questions and have the hard conversation about increases. You know, two of them, if you look from 2022, the information that was provided to us, you know, it's a 20% increase over 2022, year over year till now. You know, where in the economy is anybody getting those kind of increases, you know, over that time span? Certainly not in our economy are those kind of increases being seen by anybody. So so, you know, I just have some trouble with capital. There's, you know, and we all know that, you know, one of the groups is looking at $50,000 to $60,000 worth of capital year in and year out, when others are not necessarily being able to, you know, have increasing capitalization of their organizations. And so, you know, they're all different. They're all different. They've all got different requests. And in order to be fair, that's why I thought if we froze it at last year's amounts, that's an amount that we've all agreed to before. And we all thought was fair last year. And went into 2026, once we get a real good idea of what this governmental transfer process looks like, we'll be in a better position, I think, to determine how to move forward. Councilor Roper, please.
I just have to remark on the complete shift in tone coming to the community groups as opposed to the last 2 days of deliberations, I guess. When we look at our own staffing, we're seeing over $500,000 increase just for wages. And when we look at the total budget of the community groups, it's coming in at 964,000, I think, for operations. So an increase of 130,000 from the last year, but that's for multiple community groups. So I'm just wondering, and also, you know, we're talking about adding $500,000 for new initiatives. And we're also justifying that by breaking down the tax and how much, you know, industry is going to cover and how little of an impact it comes to the residents. So when you talk about cutting $130,000 from a ton of groups that really make up the heart and soul of this community who are already suffering from lack of all the things you just talked about. I don't see the benefit to the taxpayer for doing this. I certainly see the detriment to every nonprofit that's asking for funds. And why would we ask them to prepare their budgets and give us our numbers when we're just going to go back to them and say, not a penny more? I don't think that's going to work, and you're going to have to do a lot more convincing to change my mind.
Well, I think in response to that, we're, you know, just because they've prepared and we go through a budget process does not mean that they're automatically entitled to the increases that they're looking for. We have to look at the overall picture of the municipality. And, you know, with respect to the $500,000 pool that I'm interested in setting up for firefighting, you know, if we're not taking preventative measures and we lose this community, then none of it matters. None of it, because there's no community to provide services for. And so I think there's a lot of people out there who would agree with me that there has to be some focus. There's got to be some focus around protecting the community, and we've got to start somewhere. That's why I put that out there. And the tone that you're talking about, that's changed. I'm trying to lead a conversation, a tough conversation. It's not, it's not an easy thing for me to put it out there, but somebody needs to put it out there because we have to start asking ourselves the tough questions based on the economy that we're in. And I just don't see that increases, are justified for anybody at this time, based on the way our economy is suffered, since the last budget. And, I don't think I can say it any more clearly than that, I guess. So, if it doesn't convince you, then, I guess we're at odds. That's all. Sure, of course.
I guess I'll just finalize by saying there's going to be no community without our nonprofits. And that's a different kind of destruction. It's a social well-being to the community. You're going to have people not want to live here because they're not going to have the status quo of services that they're used to. And that's what we've been talking about with our own budget is maintaining services, that status quo, and there's increases built into that. So I'm hoping, Mr. Mayor, that I can change your mind on this, because I think you're taking the community down a very dark path that is going to have wide-reaching repercussions. And I think you should very carefully consider that. It doesn't seem like that difficult of a prospect for you to introduce that. But if we are going to look at these budgets in that light, we should be looking at the rest of our budget as well. And I would expect some fairness when it comes to the overall budget of the municipality.
Well, I guess certainly I'll use my mayor's prerogative to respond to that and, say what, basically, I suppose we're at odds. This is all we're doing is looking at presenting a budget to the public. We're not at the decision-making stage yet. And so the public has more than enough an opportunity, over the next couple of months to weigh in on these approaches and, come forward with their concerns. I'm not talking about eliminating funding. I'm not eliminating the funding to these organizations. I'm just saying we need to stop the growth at this time. So, I hear you. If the organizations can't get by without the increases that then they're running on an awful close margin. And I guess I understand that. I just disagree that an organization can give a 10% raise to their employees, justify 20%, try to justify 20%, give 10%. I mean, it's easy for boards to do that when the bill is coming to us. So, we've got to look at we've got to look at being seen to be, as I said, being seen to be uncaring of what's going on with the rest of the community. So that's my end to that. If anybody else have any conversations?
Yeah, this is like an exceptionally difficult conversation to have. Lots of emotion tied to it. I am a huge supporter of all of these groups, and I'll declare my conflict right now and won't speak to anything that's got anything to do with the Literacy Society, so we'll just remove that one off the table. But I am concerned with when you go, there's one I don't want to call out any one organization, but there is one organization that over the last 3 years have asked for an increase of $63,000 in 3 years. So I just don't know, and a 10% increase to another one staff. And I don't support the drone project for the search and rescue. I'm not sure how that all connects, but we have drones. I don't know whether we lend them out if it's a search or whatever, but I am concerned with the amount of funding that continues to increase. So that's why I would support the mayor's initiative in holding the line where it was last year. And I totally understand what you're saying, Councillor Roper. Also understand that the mayor is not talking about cutting funding, well, for anybody but the Arts Council, because I'm not sure how I feel about that one, but everybody else is at last year's rate. So yeah.
Councillor Emacs?
Yeah, this is a tough one. Empathy for all the groups. And I'm so optimistic all the time. I'm still optimistic about our tiny town. The decline in industry has affected my family. People say it's going to get worse before it gets better. I hope not. So in this situation, I mean, I can understand the freezing of the grants because we don't know what tomorrow's going to bring.
So are you in favor in the idea of freezing?
Yes.
Councillor Schultz?
I'm in favor of freezing growth in that way too, knowing that we're working on our government transfer program. I think that that's actually where our work is. That's where there's next year's coming, and I realize how fast the last one went. And I know what it's like to live by the skin of your teeth. And I think that they got us working on and getting our government transfer policy framework in place will make this job way easier from a process point of view. So I'm good with it at that.
Okay, Councillor Anders?
You look at minimum wage last year went up. It's slated to go up again this year. Costs rise, and they all are rising, and I understand we've got taxation. I don't see us having the best benefit doing it this way to our community organizations. They're mostly part-time people. They're being affected a lot by things out of their control. We want status quo. This is another status quo service area. I don't see putting a freeze in to be in the biggest benefit of our community at this time. If we want to put a freeze in to hold to last year's, I think that's something we'll have to look at for the whole organization. That way we'll have actual effect. I know our staff's done great. We've efficient, and I'd like to give that benefit to the board members who are putting these requests forward as well. We ask for them to ask for what they need, and that's it. I don't see a whole overarching reach here of them trying to take extra, trying to maintain what we have for service levels. There's a few things we can scrutinize through here, but I couldn't support a freeze today without presenting our budget as it sits to the community.
Okay, then we've all had an opportunity to speak. I see that there's four who are prepared to move forward with a freeze on last year. Again, this is a preliminary budget. There's lots of opportunity for the public to have input to the idea and what we're moving forward. And, you know, certainly that can inform and may change some people's minds, but that can inform all of us moving forward. So that's what I'd like to do is move forward with this freeze in the budget and present that to the public as it is.
Can I make one more comment?
Okay,
I'd just like to say we're probably, if we go forward with this presentation with the proposed freeze, we've got potentially 2 months of doubt we're installing into our community organizations and how they're going to be planning and orchestrating throughout those months.
yeah, well, I'll give them an opportunity to figure out how they might be able to deal with the increase that they've requested and the potential for them not to get it. So there's two sides to that coin. And, you know, every one of them has an opportunity to talk to the boards to the people, to their members and get their members to lobby and move towards trying to convince us, you know, otherwise. So I think that that's how we'll move forward for now, and we'll listen to the feedback from the community as it comes in.
Are we doing a vote on this?
No, today is a preliminary. There's no discussion with respect to votes or.
There's a decision here to present a different budget to the public as opposed to the budgets that have been presented to us. Should that not be a decision?
Okay, I'll put it to a vote then. So, the resolution would be to move the preliminary budget with respect to the changes to freeze the grants to community groups and the community transfers at last year's levels, with the exception of the Northern Rockies Senior Society and the Fort Nelson Community Literacy Society. No? Oh, that's right, you can't vote on that. So then to freeze. Sure, because I'm only just trying to spitball what a resolution could look like. So if you
I'm
have,
just thinking that there's several of us that have declared conflicts, so do we have to pull each of these out, or can we just make a one motion, like?
well, I
Because
think
if you're gonna include the Literacy Society, I don't feel that I can vote on that.
right.
But if you're gonna leave them
So
out,
I guess I looked at the corporate officer with respect to how we might be able to deal with this.
So it needs to be as general as possible. So if you're discussing a concept that all can weigh in on, then it wouldn't be specific to any certain organization. So you could say that the recipients of grants in 2024 be considered at that level for 2025. And then that basically infers that any new applications this year would be dealt with on their own merits.
Okay.
I don't know if that meets the spirit of what you're trying to
I
do.
think so, yeah. So then the motion would be to present the preliminary budget as presented, with the exception of freezing grants to community groups at the 2024 level for those groups who received funds in 2024. I think that's general enough. Would you agree? I'll make that motion. Do I have a seconder?
second.
Counselor Souls? Is there any further discussion? Counselor Souls?
Just, I want to remind us all where we're at in this, and that is that we're doing a preliminary budget and we're going to present what we have to the public. And so I think that in the interest of those who feel that the community groups need to participate in raising their voice to change this, to change our minds or to that they've got opportunity to do so. So I'm quite comfortable with our public because I know that if they want to engage, they can engage. And we've got this time frame ahead, so I'm completely satisfied with voting for this.
Thank you, Councillor Souls. Anybody else? Seeing none, all in favor? Are there any opposed? Councillor Roper, would you like your name recorded?
I did
Thank you.
vote no, yes.
Okay.
I
Councillor
concur.
Andrews?
Yeah, I'm not in favor. Please
Okay,
record.
would you like your name, recorded? Okay, thank you. Okay, so that motion passes. So
Can I
thank,
ask for a
go-
point of clarity?
yeah, sure.
So the one request that is included in that resolution, but that was suggested to be excluded is the Arts Northeast request.
Mhm.
So I don't know if there needs to be a separate discussion on that, or if council's happy proceeding to public consultation with the inclusion of their request for, I think it's $5,000.
Yeah, so I think based on the resolution, we can leave that in for now, and if
Okay.
we decide to take it out later, we can.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay. I think, so back over to staff for the conclusion to the discussion.
Well, if there's no further discussion on the grants to groups, then we still have which we don't have in front of you today, of course, because we didn't have the opportunity to get all the information, but we have a couple of things we need to circle back with. And specifically, it's the one that I have on my list here, and Tony can, or the corporate officer can confirm is specific to the elevator component, which we're just confirming some
Right.
information there. Looks like from a initial discussions we've been able to have since yesterday's meeting, looks like some lifting device, I guess, for the stairs can be done with minimal, if any, real engineering.
Yeah.
And what we are just confirming is we believe, but we want to confirm with the funding organization that we can utilize the grant towards that particular installation. And if so, then we'll be able to bring the information back to council to show what the impact is, or the reduction is, essentially to the overall net tax levy requirement.
Okay.
So we'll have that to you. So what I'm thinking possibly we could do is possibly Monday's, no, not Monday, we have a meeting Monday next week. I'll circle back with council and figure out what's the best approach. So you have an idea what that number looks like.
Yeah,
Yeah, and actually what we can do, actually, I guess, is given some of the proposed changes in terms of what's being presented, we obviously have to run some numbers. So I'm sure Tony will be providing that to council to be able to give an updated overall picture of with the proposed changes in terms of the resolution that was passed also.
yeah. So there's lots of opportunities over the next 4 or 5 regular meetings to introduce that information.
Yes, for sure.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, as
Yeah.
yeah, as outstanding business there.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Ms. Pike?
I just have a question around public engagement. So we've recognized that budget open house hasn't necessarily been a resounding success. And I think the theme that we continue to see working is that we go to where people are. So we have we've chatted with REC. There's a few events in the coming weeks that might provide an opportunity for council and staff to be in busy places, and we can absolutely prepare material to have available. But we just need to understand what council's interest is in doing that, because it will take more capacity than what we've put out in past, obviously with the budget open house, but acknowledge that that hasn't necessarily been yielded a result that was useful. So I just kind of wanted to understand where your thoughts were in terms of attending some of those larger community events and just being open for questions there versus that come to you approach, or come to us approach, I guess.
I'm absolutely comfortable in taking this to whatever events we can. I also think that the open house is still important. You know, people, although they may not have participated, they will have heard and will have expected. And I expect, based on the discussion that we just had, that there will be, there'll be an increased presence or interest in the budget this year. So it's a difficult discussion. It's been had at least at this level, the preliminary level, and we'll see where it goes within the community for sure. So we want every opportunity that we can to engage. Agreed?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Anybody else have comments with respect to what Jaylene had to say? No? Okay. Okay, then is there any public who have any questions online? Ms. Pike?
Actually, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Mayor and Council for sitting through our budget presentation. And I also want to thank the team around the table and the people behind the team, because I think we were able to come together and have a team building exercise and be able to discuss all of our projects and our visions together. And I just would like to thank this team for a job well done.
I agree. Good job. So I also, before I was going to adjourn, was going to thank everybody for your participation, your discussion, your frankness. You know, for staff for going through the process that we know is a lengthy and tedious task. You know, guided by you back to the job, and thank you very much. I think it was well presented, and you know, the entire team did well. Josh got a little learn about bringing tea for himself, but I think I agree. I think it was a great team exercise, and you know, although we're not at consensus, I think that there's plenty of opportunity for us to engage with the community and each other moving forward. So thanks to everybody, and adjournment is in order. So I adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody.